All right, guys. So it's about 8:02, so let's get started with. Want to give some basic housekeeping. On the right hand, within your GoToMeeting or slash GoToWebinar, uh, GoToWebinar window, you should see a link to the presentation itself. So if you want to download the presentation, you can just download it over there and kind of flip through it if you want to. Also, there's a question and answer section, so you can, as we'd like to keep this thing fairly interactive. So if you, both Jeremy and I are on the call right now, so if you have questions, Jeremy can answer it as we are going through the presentation. So we typically like to keep these things fairly interactive. So if you have questions, feel free to keep shooting them, and we'll just keep answering them as we go along. So without further ado, let's kind of go forward with it. So today we are pretty excited about launching BadgeFarm. We're launching this in private beta, which means we are going to, pilot this with a select group of customers that makes sense. Before that, I want to kind of give you guys a brief overview of who we are really. Jeremy, can we move to the next slide? So we are part of a group of companies that we've been working with for the last about 6 or 7 years. We started off with QuestionPro, then Survey Analytics came to life, and then IdeaScale about 2 years ago came to life. We're all these companies that you see in front of you have been, we're involved in it in one way or the other. And BadgeFarm kind of actually came out of IdeaScale, which got launched about 2 years ago. So BadgeFarm is our vision of what an engagement platform should be really at its core. And we've kind of been obviously very, very hard at work, and we'll talk a little bit about gamification in about a minute. And so BadgeFarm has come out of a group of companies that obviously have been very successful in their own respective spaces. Next slide, Jeremy. So really, let's kind of step back and say, what is gamification? The term itself probably was coined by Jane McGonigal to basically represent the idea of using game-like theory, game-like elements into everyday life, really. So if you step back and say, why do we like games? What is it in a game that engages us? You'll notice there are about 3 or 4 really core principles that make a game, and then you step back as a marketer or as an engagement professional, say, what is it really? And you'll see that it's actually an engagement model, really. If you start thinking of game as an engagement model, it is one of the best engagement models that is out there. And as marketers, as people who are trying to move people to do something, as a marketer or even as a software professional, we all want people to do certain things. We either buy our products, use our products, and we all know that engagement is a key component to it, and gamification is essentially an encapsulation of that model, really. And what Jane McGonigal, she wrote this book called Reality is Broken, and she's distilled kind of the idea of a game into obviously these 4 different very, very concrete models. Each game has a goal, it's got rules, obviously it's got some sort of feedback system. When you shoot somebody, you see a lot of blood. That's the feedback system. It has to be very, very instantaneous, and obviously you can't force people to play a game. So that, in a nutshell, gamification is taking these constructs and putting them into other models. So for example, we want people to take surveys. So how do you kind of design a game around it? We want people to post ideas for our companies. We want people to comment on our blog posts. So taking these ideas, and we want people to do certain things. We know people do certain things if they are engaged in a particular way, and the combining these 2 things is what gamification is all about. So let's go on to the next one. And then obviously we want gamification to be part of the enterprise. So we can't just think of gamification separately, and then whatever's happening within the enterprise separately. I want to give you guys a quick example of how gamification can be used to actually affect behavior really. As part, Infosys is a fairly large Indian outsourcing company. And they usually bus all their employees from different parts of Bombay into their main development center. And what they found out was, if you start busing people at about, during peak, rush hour, it takes about 1.5 hours to get people from, their homes to the office. Whereas if you obviously did it, before rush hour, I mean, I think this applies almost everywhere in the world, really. You can bus people in, quicker, faster. And then you start thinking, okay, we have this problem. We have a resource constraint problem. So this problem can be solved, in a couple of different ways. One is we can probably add more buses. Try to see if we can get more buses on the street. But surely that's really not going to solve the problem, really, because more buses, that doesn't mean the bus can move from point A to point B faster. So what they did was they started telling all their employees, like, hey, if you start showing up to work early, if you take the 6 o'clock bus versus you take the 8 o'clock bus, you get some, points. They were not monetary in nature directly. The points and the reward system was not monetary in nature. However, people still, it was very social. It was very, people could check each other's points out, and people, they created a little pyramid. They created little badges around it and say, hey, I got, I won the, the early bird of the month award. So people really got engaged in it, and that actually affected behavior, which was from a practical and a simply dollars and cents standpoint, move people to do, move their behavior without forcing people to do certain things. And the other option would have been just, putting out a diktat, putting something out saying that, hey, you must show up to work at 6 o'clock in the morning as opposed to 9 o'clock in the morning, because that's when, we spend the least amount of time going from point A to point B. So that's a good example of how, gamification was used within the enterprise to actually affect behavior. Can we go to the next slide, Jeremy? All right, so I talked about kind of, the old way versus, can we go to the next slide? The new way, this gave users, this example, that I just gave you, gave you an obvious way of saying, hey, look, I cannot force people to do things, but I can entice people to do things. And then for the enticement, obviously, that is gamification. So hopefully, very briefly, that helped you understand what gamification is. I'm going to turn this over to Jeremy right now, and he's going to kind of lead you through what BadgeFarm is from now on. Go ahead, Jeremy.
All right, thanks, Viv. Okay, so let's use an example of poker to start off with, just to kind of ground us here. The goal of poker is to end up with a lot of cash. The rules of poker involve the cards that you use, the suits, the cards 1 through 9, Jack, Queen, King, and Ace, and betting. And the feedback system that's involved is your hand, the up cards, the chips that you have, the faces and actions of the players that are involved. So how does that relate to BadgeFarm? BadgeFarm provides goals in the form of badges, achievements, and awards. The rules are points, point modifiers, and challenges. And the feedback system is badges, widgets, and notification systems. A feedback system can include several different things. You can use color, shape, quantity, size, interactivity, and sound are all ways that you can provide feedback to the user. Basically, it's the senses that the human has that gives them feedback. BadgeFarm uses color in 8 dimensions to track experience points. So any behavior that's tracked within BadgeFarm can involve more than one dimension of points. Red represents influence within your online community. Orange represents time spent in your community. Gold, which is kind of hard to see on the slide here, but gold represents organization of your community data. Yellow represents engagement, which is frequency and reliability of involvement. Green represents sophistication or complexity of involvement. Light blue represents virality or social network and sharing and influence. Blue represents function, roles, profile updates. And purple represents breadth, variety of involvement with data, and involves geolocation.
So I want to interject really quick, Jeremy. Over here, we looked at various dimensions with which you can interact with your constituents, and it can be, your citizens if you're in the government business, your consumers if you're in marketing, your employees if you're in HR, really, and say, any one of these 8 axes can be measured, and you can use any one of them. And through BadgeFarm, what our goal is to let you choose, okay, what is important to you. Okay, if you believe influence is the most important dimension that you care about, you don't have to use all these other dimensions in terms of when you plug in BadgeFarm with your community. You would, as kind of a pre-configuration setup, you could say, well, what we care about is influence. What we want to know is who are the influencers in our community, and actually reward
amplify. You can amplify or attenuate any of the dimensions based on the particular needs of the community that you're creating. Anything else, Viv?
No, that's it. Go for it.
Okay. Rainbow colors have special meaning, kind of spanning the entire gamut of experience. So things like summarized point leaders in the system, or special recognition, and cross multidimensional badges have rainbow in colors. Shapes. So shapes have special meaning within BadgeFarm. Whenever you see a square-shaped badge, that means that it's been earned by behavioral involvement within the system. A circle-shaped badge has been bestowed upon a member by an administrator or a moderator. It takes the action of somebody else to give you a circular badge. A diamond-shaped badge represents scarcity. So it's similar in nature to like a four-square mayor badge. If you don't keep showing up at a coffee shop, you're going to lose the mayor badge. So in BadgeFarm, the mayor badge would be diamond shaped.
One thing I wanna just add over here. We looked at it from a couple of different angles, and what we wanted to do is to kind of cover as many different use cases as possible. What our vision is that for each kind of implementation of BadgeFarm, for each service implementation, if you will, you again will decide as the administrator, or as the kind of the guy who's configuring the engagement plan, will decide which of these badges or which of these models you want to use, again, to obviously affect behavior, really. So it's not that you have to use all 3 different models, or any, you can pick and choose. And that's we're building essentially kind of obviously the platform upon which you can determine how to how to emphasize behavior, or like Jeremy said, attenuate or amplify any of the behaviors that you're really looking for.
Yeah, along those lines, for instance, let's say you wanted a kind of a hands-off community. You wanted the community to manage itself. You might actually give out moderator badges that would be square badges based on some rule systems that are applied. So let's say once you tag 15 posts, then you would grant the user moderator access because they've shown behaviors that represent somebody who is a moderator, somebody who organizes the data. So that might be an example of dealing out square moderator badges instead of circle ones. So again, the badges have embedded meaning in them, so that if you glance at a badge, you can see what it means. The dimensional experience is embedded in the color. The icons are representative of the behavior that's involved. And again, the shapes represent different things. So in this case, the scarce badges are on the right, and the earned badges are on the left. Taking a deep dive into a single badge, this is the time that's a typo there. It says level 3 experience badge. So you can tell that by the red represents influence. At the bottom of the badge, you see circles that represent that this is 3 of 9. The square represents the fact that it was earned, and the stars represent experience in the system. All this information is conveyed with no text, so there's just we're trying to squeeze as much information into a small space as possible. And then additionally, for 508 compliance and to help people with color blindness, directionality is also used to kind of further highlight the color in case people have issues with recognizing colors. So in this case, the upper left is red.
I want to add one more thing over here. The 509, 508 compliance really is obviously a very important issue for government entities. If government entities want, and we do a fair amount of business through IdeaScale, with the federal government, and this has been a fairly high priority item for them because obviously, Americans with Disability Act is high on the priority for all federal websites. They have to comply with it, and so we've thought about that right from the get-go. When we were thinking about BadgeFarm, we decided, this has to be compliant. This has to be 508 compliant right from the get-go.
Challenges. Another way to provide the user with feedback is to give them challenges. What challenges do is they give people who are participating in a community the ability to have very concrete, discrete steps for them to achieve things that are at their skill level. Challenges are presented to people based on their past behavior, and additionally, they're presented based on the needs of the community at the time. So you might have a challenge, say, to get 5 ideas by the end of the weekend. If you want to incentivize people to be participating on the weekend, then you can give a challenge. And out of the challenge would give a bounty of points. This challenge is the Twitter Promoter Challenge, which involves 3 steps: to complete your profile, to connect to Twitter, and to tweet a link to this site. So in this case, the person has achieved the first 2 of those steps, and the third is to tweet a link. And then in this case, the feedback system would, on hover or on click, provide the user with instructions on how to achieve the behavior that's desired. Another feedback widget that we have is an avatar widget. Every system, or just about every web system, has a location for an avatar. And avatars are all over the place, so rather than drilling into somebody's avatar and then going and finding a list of some historical behavior in some kind of tabular format, we've embedded it fully within the avatar itself. So on hover, the colors would show, and then on click it would expand out to show you the 8-dimensional experience. So at a glance here, you can see that this person is an influencer, both internally because of the red. They're a 7-star red, which means that they're a heavy influencer in your community, and an 8-star virality, which is on the bottom, the light blue. That means that they're an influencer. And purple on the left represents breadth of engagement. So they're also heavily engaged in multiple aspects of your community, and additionally, they might be checking into different venues that you have.
Jeremy, I want to interject there a little bit. I think there's been a little bit of confusion in terms of the Q&A side. I don't think I am getting the questions and answers. But one of the questions that was just asked was, are challenges custom or pre-configured? Jeremy, can you speak to that? Are we allowing custom challenges?
We're going to have both. The idea here is we're going to examine the challenges that people add to their system, and as we see patterns of challenges evolve and present themselves, then we'll create templates out of the challenges. So the goal is to provide a turnkey solution and to provide as many simple challenges as possible so that you know, it's easier to configure in your system. Be a lot easier if you have a big list to pick from and you get ideas. So both is the answer. So if you're a CMO and you're trying to identify influencers, what do you look for? Well, one way that you could look is you could look at the avatar icon as you're just scrolling through big lists of people, and if you hover over the avatar icon, you can get the information about the virality and the influence just by seeing the avatar.
Another question, Jeremy, one second. Another question that was just asked is, can this be used kind of in an offline model also? That is, when an action happens with a user that is not online, can the moderator or can the system admin go and issue badges to specific individuals based on obviously an offline event? Somebody attends a conference, we would like to give the keynote speaker of the conference a particular badge. Can that be done easily?
Yes, that would just be a circular badge. A circular badge represents a badge that has had the influence of some administrator or moderator. So we do plan on having that capability. And in fact, that is how we bestow our users with the moderator capability in our system. An action is necessary to boost somebody from normal member to a moderator. So that the behavior of that is no different than bestowing a circular badge on, you know, a presenter or something like that. It's the same exact thing. Another way a CMO could identify influencers is by using the leaderboard. So since we have the 8 dimensions, all you need to do is sort by influence in your leaderboard, and you can see the people who lead by influence. Moderators might have a little bit of a different perspective. They might not be interested in influencers, but more interested in the content that gets created and the people who are fully engaged in the system. And those might not be people who are influencers. They might be the ones being influenced. So green is represents sophistication, or basically the complexity of involvement in the community. So let's say somebody submits an idea to IdeaScale that eventually gets implemented. Well, that person was smart because they came up with a good idea, and that idea bubbled its way up, going from active status up to in review, and then eventually being completed. So as those steps progress, the person, through none of their involvement, that idea progresses, and they get more and more points as it progresses because they've shown that they have the insight to create complex and useful ideas. Yellow represents frequency and recurring behavior. So you can think of those as people who click a lot of things, or people who have to comment on everything. Those are the people who are yellow, that they're engaged. Moderators can also spot outliers in big lists. So this guy, for example, Robert David, is sophisticated, and he happens to be in the list of a bunch of people who are fast clickers. So if you had all your points rolled up into one dimension, which a lot of gamification systems do, you wouldn't see this guy, and you wouldn't know that he's a special guy. He's not a clicker. He's not clicking very much. He's actually contributing useful stuff. BadgeFarm will have social network tracking. So when a user shares a link to your community, it would be really good if you could recognize those people and um, reward them when possible. So if somebody shares a link and that link is clicked by 10,000 people, um, you want to be able to find out who those people are because they're really important to your community. So we provide a capability to do link tracking, which records and gives members the points for the links that they share.
Jeremy, I want to quickly interject over here. We think that this is the part that Jeremy just mentioned. A simple thing like that, where you are rewarding, you're tracking end to end and rewarding based on outcome, really. So, which is, look, you want people to tweet and link to your ideas, to your blog, to your, pick whatever the widget of the day is, really, and while there are a lot of tracking services, they're not integrated into the gaming model, really, right? So if you can obviously create a bit.ly link and shorten it and send it out, so you can find out, okay, 700 people clicked on that link. But because of the fact that Scoville tweets out a link, 7,000 people come, Scoville should be the influencer, which is we know that for a fact. With BadgeFarm, our goal is to kind of obviously track that end to end. So when people use our gaming model, we'll give you essentially a link shortening service that we track. Like Jeremy said, both outbound link distribution and as people click on it, we'll track it, and as part of the configuration, we will tell okay, if there's a here's how many points you want to award towards link tracking and towards the link tracking aspect of sharing, really. And this, a simple thing like this, where it's integrated into the gaming model, gives us a huge benefit in terms of now the influencers are really getting the rewards of actually influencing by getting those points. So I want to kind of obviously underscore that. Go ahead, Jeremy.
Okay. So next we'll take a look at an influence demo. So in this case, we're going to use Dunder Mifflin as an example. Jim will submit an idea and get points, and then the points that he gets are engagement and complexity points, and then Pam comments and gets engagement and complexity points, but then Jim, through no involvement of his own, gets points too. So I'll break out of the thing here. So Jim has submitted this idea to have a beer fridge. Go back to the leaderboard. And he has points for that. You can see a breakdown of the points that he has here. So he has 291 points, and he has 60 points that are influence points. So now if I switch over to Pam, seems to be added. Maybe we need to do a refresh here. So now Jim, through no involvement, has just earned influence points because he has influenced somebody else to participate within the community. So Jim is going to earn these influence points, while he sleeps, because maybe he had a really good idea, or he started a flame war, or whatever. He's influencing other people within the community and eliciting behavior from those people.
I want to stress one more thing over here. Um, like I mentioned earlier on, there are these 8 axes, and the system admin will determine which of these axes really get hold. So we want to kind of, like I said earlier on, cast a wide net. So at some points it may seem like, why do we have so many different things in the demo? Do we need to have influence as well as experience as well as this? No, not necessarily. You don't have to obviously use all 8 axis points. You can use one or more really. So the demo might look a little bit overwhelming, but in reality, when it comes down to it, it's really up to what we want to do is to provide a platform, like I said, for for you guys to determine what are the different axes that you want to chase after, really.
And additionally, the different axes, they're going to be interesting to different audiences. So one person may only look at red and green, and the other people might look at only purple and yellow. So it really kind of is up to the it's up to the beauty is in the eye of the beholder. Somebody's going to be looking for one thing, and somebody's going to be looking for something else. So we're providing a turnkey gamification platform. The goal here is to make game templates, and you choose the template that fits the community that you have. So we started with integrating with our idea scale system, which is the general term ideation community. We're going to do it for blogs and forums and other web applications as people bring them into our system.
I just want to mention one thing over here, Jeremy. We will also be providing an API for developers to integrate. So if you have an app that needs to be gamified, you can just start using our REST APIs that you can make from. It's not limited to IdeaScale or Question Pro or any one of our apps. It's obviously it's anybody and everybody can use, as long as you can make API calls using REST. You should be able to plug in your activity log, plug in your registration logs, and start getting widgets or badges and plug it into your system. Really.
Yep. Step 2, add REST web calls to your app. So really, we're just recording activity that's occurring within your system, and then we're organizing it based on the different dimensions. So the third step is to add BadgeFarm widgets to your UI via JavaScript, which will provide feedback. So we'll have challenge widgets and point widgets and the avatar widget, bunches of different widgets depending on the application. Developers, BadgeFarm is a true RESTful web service. Really, one call is only needed for integration, and that's just posting events. And the events themselves can include target information about like what was acted upon, the location of the target. There's tons of different things that can be stored associated with the event. And that all is for post-processing. And activity widgets, which are another type of widget that we're going to be providing. And all data is exposed via a REST API. If any of you have kind of gone to our site and fumbled around in it and thought, God, this looks like not very good, it's because 100% of our time so far has been spent building the REST API. So all of the calls have been going back and forth via REST, and the user interface has been neglected a bit. So the attention has been paid to IdeaScale as the user interface, along with the widgets, and the back end being the web service being provided by BadgeFarm. And here's just an example of a REST call being made to yank out the leaderboard for some community. So now we break for questions.
Jeremy, you're the only one who can see the questions, apparently. I don't see the questions, so...
All right, I'm going to iterate through them here. I got, how is everyone? Fine, thank you. link to
Just
the
go through them really
presentation.
quick and see if there are questions that that we can read out and then talk about.
Looking through them here. Post your questions now.
One of the questions that was asked, I know that has been asked at least in the past, is in terms of custom badges versus standardized badges. So the answer is obviously it depends upon licensing. So our initial game plan is to have a standardized set of badges by vertical, and then have custom badges depending upon what kind of licensing agreement we can set up. So that's kind of the short answer to the question. And I know it has been asked quite a bit vis-a-vis idea scale as to we want to create our own set of custom badges. The interface or the architecture supports creating custom badges by product, by vertical, so we can add in badges depending upon what kind of a licensing structure we set up and what the volume is. Again, at this point, we're not necessarily going out and doing the custom badges for our clients, obviously, because we're in private beta. We want to focus our development effort in getting the core functionality out, but custom badges are definitely part of the roadmap. Another question was, influences to be awarded just based on the number of ideas implemented, but also the ROI of each idea. Jeremy, can you speak to that? Can we attach custom fields to the score, the influence score?
What was that question again?
So we want influences to be awarded just not on the number of ideas, but also on the ROI of each idea. And the ROI would be a custom field that was set up for a particular idea. So essentially, for each idea, there's a custom field, and based on that custom field, can the influence score be multiplied?
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of what we're doing as the status changes of ideas. What we have is events that say that the idea was promoted, and you can give a multiplier. So if an idea, say, gets boosted in status 3 levels at one time, like going from in review all the way to complete, then you basically boost, you promote it by sending an action through the status change, and the status change net of 3 multiplies that action by 3, and so the person gets that much more involvement in that points for that event.
Okay, Jeremy, you got any other questions out there?
I'm looking through. How do we communicate challenges? The challenges will be communicated based on triggers within your community. So, for instance, if a user first logs in, like first signs up for your community, you may challenge them with completing their profile. And their profile might have multiple steps, and you might want them to have work in a home email or something. So you can provide them with challenges based on triggered events within your system, and the challenges themselves can be arbitrary number of steps, and each step can and probably should have instructions on how to complete it. So you'll communicate those challenges through widgets that exist within the pages that you have. And those widgets will present themselves at the appropriate moment for the appropriate user. Yeah, it's virality, not virility. We can call it social influence, too. Still early on locking in on the names.
It's okay to increase virility, too. All right. Okay.
Can I,
all right.
another question, can I tie these points for ideas with points for taking training on another system? Read this more carefully.
That was the offline point addition model, right? So having, giving influence points or giving any engagement points based on offline activity or kind of separate activity, which is not online. If it was online, then you just use the API calls to update it. But if it was offline, then are we gonna is BadgeFarm, Jeremy, as part of the roadmap, we are going to be able to provide the administrators with some model to update the influence scores directly?
Yes, that's something that I haven't talked about really. The idea here is to keep the there's two levels of points. There's experience and there's points. Normally there's a one-to-one mapping in your community between experience and points, but the reason that we're keeping a distinction is because we are going to determine the values of the experience points as a normalized way to collect data across all communities. But then the experience points can then be converted, are converted into points within your community. Normally, there's a one-to-one multiplier between experience and points, but you can amplify or attenuate those points as much as you want. So what that ends up meaning is you have full control over the points that are earned for different actions within your community. But if those points stay normalized within our system so that they can be compared to all other activity within the system.
Mm-hmm.
Can I start using these badges now? I assume Angelique is an IdeaScale user. If so, we can turn it on, and we can talk to you about it after the fact, or after the presentation. If so, how?
Okay. All right. Good. It's 8:45. We ended it a little, a little early. Any other questions, Jeremy, you feel like that need to be addressed?
I don't think so.
Okay. All right. Thank you, guys. Thank you very much. This is kind of obviously a beginning of the journey into gamification for us. So, so let us, we will be over the next. One of the things that I do want to talk about over the next 3 months, we'll be inviting some very distinguished CEOs who are in the media space, in the technology and IT space, to come and give us their views about where they see, in general, gamification and engagement going and how important it is to them. We probably are going to start with a couple of people in the media space that we'll try to invite in the next early January, and then from there on we'll go forward. That's about it. If you guys have obviously questions about BadgeFarm, you can email Jeremy or me. We will be posting updates on where BadgeFarm is going on the blog, both on the IdeaScale blog as well as the BadgeFarm blog as we go along. And our first kind of implementation is really going to be focused around how IdeaScale communities can be kind of gamified, if you will. That's going to be our core focus for the rest of the month. And early January we'll start adding on other systems and other pre-built systems into the equation. That's about it. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Couple questions here to wrap up. Is it possible to translate the 8 different dimensions into different language? Yeah, we will be adding internationalization into the system. At the moment, it's not there, but it will be, just like is in IdeaScale. Privacy controls. The information that is collected. This question is specifically about having their Twitter activity connected. We'll definitely provide opt-in and opt-out controls for privacy behavior. If people don't want to share links publicly, then they don't have to, and they don't have to use the link shorteners and the tracking capabilities either. So that about wraps it up. Thanks a lot, everybody, and thanks for joining us.